SuperTalk Mississippi media production.
Find your new ride at Kia Macomb's all-new location at the corner of I-55 and Highway 98. Come find out why Macomb loves Kia Macomb at the corner of I-55 and Highway 98. Right on the corner, right on the price.
You're talking to the Rolex wearing, diamond ring wearing, kid stealing, wheeling dealing, limousine riding, jet flying, son of a gun, and I'm having a hard time holding these alligators down. Woo!
How's the hair? Strong, so strong. My hair could lift a car off a baby if it had to. Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
Good morning, Mississippi.
Everything gonna be all right this morning.
Mornings with Richard Cross.
Oh, yeah.
Here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Woo! Now, when I was a young boy, at the age of 5, my mother said I was gonna be.
Good Thursday morning. Welcome to Mornings with Richard Cross. I'm your host alongside Lance Tolbert. Thanks for being with us. Love to hear from you this morning. How do you do that? You join us on the C Spire text line, 601-879-4395. Give your business the edge with gigabit fiber internet from C Spire Business. It's backed by world-class IT professionals who live where you do, and that's right here in C Spire country. Check them out online at cspire.com/business. C Spire, customer inspired. We have made it to Thursday morning. That means the weekend is just around the corner. Lance, selfishly, it is good to be back in the home office. Good to be back in the state of Mississippi after a couple of days in the Palmetto State. But nice to be home. Always nice to be home.
Yeah, nothing wrong with the Palmetto State, but
No.
you know, getting home's always good. Getting back to the home office, comfort, and then also, I don't know how the winds were blowing, but you may have made it back either very fast or very slow, because there was some wind over the last couple of days, and I know you were battling that getting back down to the house.
Yeah, it was windy. But not too bumpy on the flight yesterday. Finished the show, mad dash to the airport in Columbia. Flight coming in was delayed. No big deal. Now I got time to grab a cup of coffee and a donut before we get on. Not badly delayed, but then the fear sets in of, wait, what about the next one? What about the connection?
Right.
But made it fine for that. There wasn't a lot of wiggle room. I walked from one end of the Charlotte airport to the other end of the Charlotte airport, and as I walked up to the gate, they were like, now boarding, flight, da-da-da. So back into Memphis, into the car, put Memphis in the rearview mirror as fast as I can, and smells so good back in the home state of Mississippi.
We're getting ready for the weekend. You got a busy weekend planned, or do you get to lay low a little bit?
Oh, no.
No. Busy times.
Headed to Baton Rouge this weekend.
Oh, the Red Stick.
Yeah. Got LSU Texas A&M Saturday afternoon on TV. And then we come home and turn around the next morning, and it's spring break week. So you were flying without me next week, brother. I'm off. We got a little family trip on spring break, and excited about that. Kids
That's always good.
Looking forward to it, counting down the days. So pretty fired up about that.
Get the batteries charged up, ready for the sprint through the summer. You get spring and summer, baseball and basketball run. March Madness will be on you, you know.
In fact, as soon as we get back from spring break, be my first baseball game. I've got the third game, the Sunday game of Mississippi State's opening series against Texas.
Wow.
So that's going to be fun.
That's some history there, too, as a kid, going back to the great era of Clark and Palmero and Thigpen and Brantley and the boys. They had that Texas series in there in the well, I guess it was in the World Series. People like, what was it, Calvin Schiraldi and all kind of big names.
Hey, you want some Will Clark trivia?
I'd love it. Yeah.
Somebody gave me this over the weekend. I have not fact-checked it. You are welcome to, if you would like. Will Clark hit a home run in his first college at-bat his first single A, double A, triple A, and first big league at bat.
What a sweet swing he had, too. Oh, man.
Oh, so goodness.
It's not
so
two
good.
guys you wanted to face. Will Clark, Rafael Palmeiro, and that whole group was just amazing.
Yeah.
But, yeah, those two right there from the left side, I'd have had to be throwing some splitters at those boys. Goodness.
I only think there's one birthday of significance today. You may disagree. 1972. The great Shaquille O'Neal.
Well, that's a big one there, yeah.
He is a large man.
There was a video I was watching yesterday. It was just like a little short on YouTube of him jamming on somebody, and it was this big old white guy. And he wasn't a 7-footer, but he was close. And when Shaq jammed on him, he kind of rode him in and then just threw him into the stands like the guy was a dish rag. I mean, it was amazing. That is not a guy, again, you want to come across on the basketball court.
So,
I wouldn't have.
I'm obviously, not Shaq size, but I'm not a tiny guy either. And did a game a few years ago in Baton Rouge. They were honoring him that night, and he came and he sat down with us at halftime. I'm telling you, there is nobody on the face of the earth that has ever made me feel smaller than Shaquille O'Neal. I've got a picture of it, and it's like, I feel like his ring could have been my watch. Like his hands were massive. Like just everything, the entire scale of Shaq was incredible. Super nice guy, really funny guy, bright guy as well. 4-time NBA champion, 3-time NBA Finals MVP, and Olympic gold medalist as well.
I got one for you.
All right, what do you got?
Well, we were talking about Dolly Parton's significant other 2 days ago, I think. So guess who today? It's just the way it works out sometimes.
Dolly?
No, Stedman Graham.
Oh.
74 years old today, so I had to cover that one. And, Marion Barry as well. He had a big time while in office, too.
Great role model.
Yeah.
All right, we got some cool things on this day in history. 1869. Kind of seems like a big deal for science. In 1869, Dmitri Mendeleev presented the first periodic table of the elements to the Russian Chemical Society. Mendeleev is often referred to as the father of the periodic table. He called his table or matrix the periodic system. I'm not going to bore you with a bunch of details, but as I was reading it, I was like, okay, that was a long time ago, and this guy was really, really smart. Somebody else was smart. If you can invent something or create something or formulate something that lasts for over 100 years, you did a good job. Stood the test of time. 1899, guy by the name of Felix Hoffmann at the German company Bayer invented, or patented rather, aspirin.
Yeah, thank you.
1899.
Yeah, that was a good one.
No doubt.
Yeah, well, the Chicken McNugget from 2012, it was a 3-year-old Chicken McNugget. It sold for $8,100 on this day back in 2012. So,
oh, wow.
Yeah, and then you'll recognize this. This was kind of a big deal, I think, for most people of this era. Let's see.
This is my last broadcast as the anchorman of the CBS Evening News. For me, it's a moment for which I long have planned, but which nevertheless comes with some sadness.
Walter Cronkite, 1981, signed off as anchorman of the CBS Evening News. We rewind to 1945 when George Nissen got a patent for something that made two groups of people very, very happy. Children and doctors. George Nissen of Cedar Rapids, Iowa, receives a patent for the first modern-day trampoline. And orthopedic surgeons have been jumping for joy ever since.
That's the
I worked on that one for a long time, just for you.
That is the truth, too. Everyone that ever had a trampoline, there had to be some, either the neighbor boy or girl got injured, or you did, or you flew off of it and landed on your head.
Yeah.
That's just, exactly. The orthopedics out there saying thank you. And also pickleball. It didn't invent today or anything, but that's one of those newer inventions that all the orthopedists are like, we needed to get those 50-year-olds out doing something.
That's right. Let's take the guy that's 51 that still thinks he's an athlete, and we'll reconstruct that knee. Absolutely more than happy to.
Yeah, we can rebuild it.
1965, The Temptations, My Girl, reaches number 1 on the Billboard pop chart. We talked about this a couple of weeks ago, I think. A song that was written and produced by the Miracles members Smokey Robinson and Ronald White. when you are a writer, but you are also a performer, I wonder how you feel about the big hits that you wrote that somebody else sings. Do you wonder if I'd done that, would it have been as big a deal? Or are you just super, super excited for the mailbox money?
Yeah, I'd be more excited about the mailbox money coming in infinitely, forever and ever, because that song is still paying. It's got to be.
No doubt. No doubt. Smokey Robinson, man, he was talented. So were the Temptations. My girl, that was a good one. Man, we've got more news headlines and sports headlines than you can shake a stick at. We're going to get to those coming up in just a little while. Secretary of State Michael Watson will join us in the 7 o'clock hour this morning. We're also going to visit with Jay McDaniel from the Mississippi Gaming Association. He is the executive director there. How does the Gaming Association feel about mobile sports betting? Where is that conversation? And I'll share some details from a conversation that I had with a legislator about mobile sports betting and some of what's going on behind the scenes. All of that coming up this morning with you. We had a massive sports day yesterday right here in the Magnolia State. This is Mornings with Richard Cross, streaming at supertalk.fm and on your SuperTalk Mississippi radio station. Good morning to you.
From the Venable.
All right, now to the important stuff.
Your VIP pass to hear what the most influential Mississippians are talking about.
This is very important.
Huge news. Mornings with Richard Cross on Super Talk, Mississippi.
Let's get to the news, shall we? We start with sad news. I told you yesterday that due to the storms from Tuesday, there were a pair of people that died. They were both in Madison County. That number actually grew yesterday. A third fatality was reported yesterday morning after a line of severe storms rolled across Mississippi on Tuesday afternoon and evening. According to the Mississippi Emergency Management Agency, 71-year-old Thomas Lacey Jr. was electrocuted by a downed power line in the Roses Bluff subdivision in Madison County. 63-year-old Paul Harden lost his life when traveling on the Natchez Trace Parkway, and then you had the additional death that was reported in Wayne County. And so our condolences to those who lost loved ones during this time. There were some additional injuries in Wayne County as well. 5 counties total had damage that was reported during those storms, and I don't think we had tornadoes. It was just a big old nasty-looking line of thunderstorms with some significant wind that was attached to it along the way, and just a rough afternoon of weather in the Magnolia State. The Mississippi Senate approved a new legislative district map last week, and they did that to appease a federal order asserting that the state is diluting black voting power with the way it currently has its districts drawn. However, one of the counties set to go through the redistricting process has announced that they've retained legal counsel, and they are going to contest the proposed redistricting plan. The DeSoto County Board of Supervisors says, in light of the potential adverse impact upon our county and its citizens created by the Mississippi Senate's proposed redistricting plan, they are going to contest the plan. DeSoto County will have several special elections as a result of this redistricting plan. 2 current office holders, Senators Reginald Jackson and Michael McClendon, will be pitted against each other as portions of District 11 and District 1 would be combined under the new map to allow for a new majority black district with no incumbent. McClendon, a Republican who serves District 1, has voiced his displeasure, and he offered an amendment to the Senate bill and was voted down 33-16. Dean Kirby is chair of the Senate Rules Committee, and he said, we have a court order, and we're going to comply. This redistricting effort has been underway for a while. The Senate also was required to redraw District 45 in Forest County, which sits in the Pine Belt between Jackson and the Gulf Coast. Under the new map, neighboring districts 34, 41, 42, and 44 would also be impacted. With the new plan for Forest County, Senators Chris Johnson and John Polk, pair of Republicans in the Hattiesburg area, will have to run against each other in a special election. But Senator John Polk has announced that he is not seeking re-election, so it's not going to be an issue there. So we'll keep an eye on that, and that's actually something we'll touch on with Secretary of State Michael Watson when we visit with him coming up a little bit later this morning. The Department of Education is apparently on the clock. President Donald Trump is expected to issue an executive order perhaps as soon as today. Remember, Linda McMahon was confirmed as his new Secretary of Education. That executive order is aimed at abolishing the Department of Education. That was according to a report with the Wall Street Journal. The newspaper cited several people briefed on the matter and reviewed a draft of the order. It tells Linda McMahon to take all necessary steps to facilitate the closure of the Education Department based on, quote, the maximum extent appropriate and permitted by law.
Ain't playing around none.
Yeah.
Not playing around.
He's not. Before people wig out about this, and you and I both know that people are going to wig out over this. Like, oh, he doesn't care about education. It's not that schools are going away. It's not that learning is going away. It is simply the system that is currently in place is both at a national level inefficient and ineffective. When you look at the results of learning, not just test taking, there's a difference. There's a difference in taking tests well and actually learning. American children are learning at a rate that is behind much of the rest of the world. Some of the rest of the world. Now, I'm not trying to go all Ricky Bobby on you and tell you if you ain't first, you're last. But this is not an area where the United States needs to be on the second page of the leaderboard.
Well, and it's also not an agency that's been around since the founding of our country either. You know, it's kind of a Johnny-come-lately to it. With 1980? So, I mean, you've had over $1 trillion spent in the system, and, you know, and as McMahon says, the outcomes haven't really improved much.
Yeah.
So as you say, inefficiencies, we want to find a better setup. You know, I'm not one of those that thinks he's just going to throw it away and nothing's going to be there, and maybe that is the case. But when you have $1 trillion invested in something and you don't seem to be moving in the right direction, yes, it needs to be reevaluated. Maybe even stop for a bit, figure it out.
You know, there are serious concerns for some things related to cuts. Jobs, most importantly, right? You got a lot of people that as they go through this process, a lot of people at the Internal Revenue Service about to lose their jobs. A lot of federal employees are going to lose their jobs. And that is a very legitimate concern. And then you have stories like this. Penny press souvenir machines may be in jeopardy if the United States stops minting new pennies. Oh, the horror.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, the horror. And there are people that are upset about that. Nothing like, you know, the 50 cents you got to put in to go along with the penny so that you can crank it or turn the handle or whatever and get, you know, a tugboat or a jungle cat or, you know, the St. Louis Arch on the backside of a penny. Those are cool. Kids like those. I think we'll be okay. I think.
Yeah, we'll be fine.
Yeah.
That's one of those. It's nice to have, but not necessary. And They're trying to. It seems to me, and again, it's from perspective. Mine is that they're trying to be fair across the board. It's like there's nothing that's not on the table. If you haven't been efficient in doing your job and people haven't been coming to work, you're on the table for the chopping block.
If the penny press machines aren't efficient, they've got to go.
Got to go. And again, that's the way it seems. It doesn't seem that there's a lot of favoritism. It's across the board, and it's similar with the tariffs. Hey, if it's not been fair to the U.S., this hasn't been working for us, but it's been working real good for you, it's on the table.
One of the fascinating things about the president is he tends to speak in absolutes, but he does not negotiate in absolutes. He makes big, sweeping statements. Tariffs, 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 tariffs for everybody. 25% here, 25% here. You were at 10, you're going to 20. No exceptions. Today is the day they will go into effect. Except when I need to use that as a negotiating tool for this. President Trump granting a 1-month exemption on his stiff new tariffs on imports from Mexico and Canada for United States automakers, as worries persist that the newly launched trade war could crush domestic manufacturing. That's the way the AP writes the story. Worries persist that the newly launched trade war could crush domestic manufacturing. Now, you might go to another site and read that a different way, as there are some concerns that there may be a temporary downtick in American manufacturing with an ultimate net positive that changes the future of the United States of America. You could write the same sentence that way. Obviously, the Associated Press not going to do that. The pause comes after Trump spoke with leaders of the big three automakers, Ford, General Motors, and Stellantis.
Sounds like a drug,
I know. It really does. It really does.
What does it cure?
But here's the deal. It's the stick and the carrot, right? Here's the stick. It's coming. You are not immune. Yeah, but we've been talking and we told you. I understand what you have told me. Now get in action. You got 30 days to start manufacturing cars in the United States. You can't do that in 30 days, Mr. President. Well, you better try. And then, 29 days from now. Now, this is not reported. This is me just thought bubble here. 29 days from now, Mr. President, we show you this is what we've done in good faith. We've already moved our executives. We are in the process of transitioning to Michigan, to Indiana, to Kentucky, to Mississippi, to Alabama. These are the steps that we've taken. The entire process, sir, is going to take a year. Okay? We need monthly status reports to show what you've done. America's great again. Sports headlines when we come back. This is Mornings with Richard Cross.
Wake up, get up, and start your day right with Mornings with Richard Cross here on SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Well, now, when I walked in, I can't even begin to describe just what I smelled. Lord, was it the catfish bait or something Bubba had ate?
Whatever your favorite exclamatory word is, maybe you're a wow person or a "oh, did you see that?" You could apply that to 3 different ball games for 3 different reasons yesterday. Let's start in Oxford. What a game. Jamin Brakefield stole the show on senior night in the second half. He scored all 19 of his points in the second half, going 8 of 8 from the field. Perfect 3 of 3 at the free throw line. Ole Miss out-rebounded Tennessee. You know that's been an issue this year. 37-33. They had 15 offensive rebounds, turned the ball over just 5 times, and survived a shot at the buzzer by the Tennessee Volunteers to knock off the number 4 team in the country and pick up their 10th SEC win of the season. Tennessee had pretty balanced production, 17 points from Jordan Gainey off the bench. Chaz Lanier was red hot early in the game. He had 15. Felix Okpara, their big man, had 13. Not a big scoring night for Tennessee point guard Zakiya Ziegler, just 8 points, but he was much better in the second half. He had 15 assists in the game last night. That was for Tennessee. How about for Ole Miss? 4 in double figures. Led by Jamin Brakefield off the bench. He was outstanding. And then 13 points from Dre Davis, had a double-double. 13 points, 10 rebounds. 12 points for Matthew Morrell in his final home game in an Ole Miss uniform. 13 points for Malik Dia. Good crowd last night. Like big energy in the building. And really was that way from the opening tip. I'm going to be honest. I was not sure what the crowd was going to be like. I wasn't even sure if I was going to the game last night. Got home yesterday and 2 oldest kids were like, hey, Dad, we're going to the basketball game tonight. I'm like, if you guys want to go to the basketball game, we're going to the basketball game. So we went, and there was a pretty decent Tennessee contingent. I mean, you have the diehard Tennessee fans that travel wherever, and then you get the Memphis folks where it's just up the road, and that orange just stands out. I think the size of a Tennessee crowd on the road is always overestimated because of their color, period. End of sentence. It just stands out in a different way. But 8 o'clock game, it was cold. Basketball kind of lost a little bit of its juice, even though this is clearly a tournament team, and there ought to be more juice right now than there's been in 5 or 6 years for Ole Miss basketball. But Lance and I were talking about it earlier. If you were at the Mississippi State game in Oxford, 2 or 3 weeks ago?
Yeah, it was about a week and a half ago, I think.
It was flat in the building. Even when Ole Miss, now I know Mississippi State had a big part of that in the later stages of the game, but even early when Ole Miss jumped out to a lead, I never thought there was any juice, there was any electricity. Man, last night was different. That place was on fire for 40 minutes. Crowd stayed, they were invested, it was loud, students were great, really cool environment all the way around. All right, different outcome, same word. Wow. This one was not close. In fact, this one didn't even go the distance from the hardwood to the diamond. Mississippi State's offense started hot in the first inning and never cooled off. In an 18-3 run rule victory over number 20 Southern Miss, Diamond Dogs put together a 20-hit game, including 5 home runs. Nolan Stevens hit 2. Bryce Chance, Noah Sullivan, and Ace Reese all had single home runs in the game. Sullivan was a perfect 4 for 4 at the plate, drove in 3 runs. Stevens recorded his first career multi-home run game. Ace Reese, newcomer on the team from Mississippi State, 3 for 5, had a double, a home run, drove in 4. 4 RBIs led the team. Hunter Hines was 2 for 5. Dylan Cupp had a multi-hit game. So did Chance. Chase Hungate on the mound earned his first win as a Bulldog. Didn't have to go long. 2 1/3, shutout. He came in relief of Jacob Pruitt, who fanned a pair in 3 2/3.
That's the thing about those big games like that, the huge scoring games. Somebody's got to pitch it, right,
That's
on
right.
the other side. And State did that last night. Or those games get ugly fast. And State did what they're supposed to do on the hill and had an amazing day at the plate. It has to be. I've watched and listened to quite a few of their games, and that was an explosion right there for that State offense. Something they needed because hadn't really put together a big offensive showing too much. And that was just a –
yeah,
that's how you come out of a slump there.
What was it, season opener against Manhattan? They put 17.
Yeah.
They put 18 on the board yesterday. And with no disrespect intended toward the Jaspers, Southern Miss, much better baseball team.
Yeah.
And you remember Southern Miss beat Mississippi State
3-0.
2 weeks ago?
2 weeks ago.
Week and a half ago?
Midweek at the Rock.
No,
I mean, at
Pete.
Pete Taylor, that's what I meant. I mean, Pete Taylor Park, yeah.
That's right. Rocks across the street.
Yeah, Rocks across the street, yeah.
So good win for Mississippi State. They've got Queens coming in this weekend, final weekend of non-conference play. They open the SEC with the Texas Longhorns. Ole Miss baseball, it didn't look very good for a while. Another wow ending. Walked off Murray State 8-7-10 to make it 10 in a row for the Rebels. Second 10th inning walk-off of the season did it to Arkansas State back on the 18th of February. Ole Miss off to its best start since 2022. That season turned out well.
Yeah,
they started the year 13-1 in 22. Hayden Federico was the hero of the night. He drove in Braden Randall with the game-winning single in the bottom of the 10th. Hero of the game was Judd Utermark. Hit 2 home runs, first multi-home run of his career, 2 for 4, 2 jacks, drove in a pair of runs, scored a pair of runs. He's now got 7 home runs on the season through 12 games. That matches what he has done in his career in the previous 2 years.
No, I would be hollering at the TV for 2 years going, hit the ball the other way, man. You're huge. And once he's learned how to do that, I mean, he's been absolutely murdering the ball the other field. Huge
Ryan
asset.
Mormon was 3 for 4, drove in a run. Isaac Humphrey had a couple of hits. Taylor Raby, cool story. He has dealt with an elbow injury. He's been on campus for a couple of years, and now he was ready to go. Made his collegiate debut, started the game, worked 2 clean innings, gave up a couple of hits. Ole Miss needed 2 runs to keep playing in the bottom of the 9th inning. They were down to their last out. They were down to their last strike and didn't have anybody on base, and yet somehow got it done. Will Furness sent one out into left center field, scored a couple of runs. Ole Miss tried to win it right there with Utermark trying to come around all the way from first to score. He was thrown out at the plate. Walter Hooks out of the bullpen, the freshman, kept the racers off the board, and then Ole Miss got it done in the bottom of the 10th inning.
The moral of the story here is you're 0 for 5 going into that. Mr. Federico, you get the base hit, you're 1 for 6. That's the best base hit you'll have right there, a game winner. You don't remember the other 5. That one, that's
I was going to say, if you can only pick one, which one would you pick? Somebody said you got to mention the Lady Dogs. Yeah, SEC tournament going on the women's side in Mississippi State. A big winner yesterday, 20-point win. And I guess knocked off, was it Auburn or Missouri?
Mizzou.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. I saw the headline that said, State women knock off the Tigers. And I was like,
yeah,
great.
Yeah. Which Tiger?
I need to read a little bit more about this. All right, so got the win against Mizzou, staying alive in the SEC tournament. I'll try and give you some more information on that coming up. I want to tell you this, though. You had 2 other games on the men's side last night. Florida 99, Alabama 94. That was a fun one. Whew. Couple of heavyweights just trading blows. Oklahoma had to have a win against Mizzou. Got a win against Mizzou. 96-84 at home. Oklahoma clinging to their postseason life. And it was, what does Joe Lunardi from ESPN say about that win for Oklahoma? It was good, but not good enough to get them in the tournament. They are currently one of the first 4 out. SEC, 12 projected bids into the NCAA tournament.
Oklahoma 2 weeks ago, you would have never thought they'd even have a shot. But you got to give them credit for staying in it and keep fighting because you never know.
Yeah.
But, 2 weeks ago, I'm like, that team, they're not, no way. But
there you go.
Right there knocking on the door.
Southern Miss basketball season came to an end in the second round of the Sun Belt tournament. 78-64, Georgia Southern beat them. The Golden Eagles won their opening round game. Denijay Harris, who's had a really, really good season, had 14 points yesterday. Christian Watson had 11. Alfred Worrell off the bench had 12. Season comes to an end at 11-22 for Southern Miss. They went 5-13 in conference play. So a tough year on the hardwood for USM. And finally, give you the SEC basketball standings going into the final day of the season on Saturday. Auburn has clinched the league title at 15-2. You've got Florida at 13-4. They are hosting Ole Miss on Saturday night. Alabama plays Auburn this Saturday. They're 12-5. Tennessee's got South Carolina rolling into town at 11-6. Hold on a second. That means there's a scenario where Ole Miss could be the 4 seed in the SEC tournament, right?
Take care of business.
If they were to win against Florida, that's a tough matchup. And Tennessee were to lose to South Carolina. Never mind. There's not that scenario. Tennessee's going to beat the brakes off South Carolina on Saturday. So Ole Miss likely to be the 5, 6, or 7 seed. We'll come back. Lottery update next.
From the Venable.
Happening. You're waking up to what's happening. Mornings with Richard Cross. Right Now on Super Talk, Mississippi.
You hear that music, you know it means it's time for a Mississippi lottery update. But I want to put a bow on the sports conversation. I didn't give the SEC women's basketball tournament its due. Mississippi State, a 20-point win over Missouri, 75-55 in yesterday's third game of the day. You also had Tennessee beat Texas A&M, Georgia beat Arkansas, and Florida beat Auburn. So it sets up today's second round games in Greenville, South Carolina. Tennessee, Vandy, Georgia, Oklahoma, Florida, Alabama's the nightcap. Oh, there's one more. You know who that is, Lance?
No.
That would be the Mississippi State Lady Dogs and the Ole Miss Rebels.
Oh, goodness.
Uh-huh. That's right. Little Magnolia State rivalry in the Palmetto State. Second Palmetto State reference of the day. The winner of that game will meet Texas. Obviously, there's the Vic Schaefer angle there should Mississippi State win against Ole Miss. And for Ole Miss, it's another chance at one of the best teams in the country who they played tough at home. Lost that game by 3. It was a Texas team that only lost one game in conference play. They are the number 2 seed, though, because they lost a coin flip to South Carolina. That's ultimately how they decided who was the 1 seed and who was the 2 seed. Perhaps hanging in the balance for Ole Miss, perhaps an opportunity to host an NCAA women's basketball first-round regional for the first time in school history.
That'd be pretty huge there.
That'd be a pretty big deal. That really would be a pretty big deal. So, good luck to both teams. May they play well, and may the best women win. All right. Here we go. Your lottery update brought to you by the Mississippi Lottery, mslottery.com, Lotto America. No jackpot winner yesterday. Just keeps on climbing. Cash value now up to $12,040,000. $25.56 million is the jackpot. No jackpot winner last night, and we hit the threshold. Over $300 million now for the jackpot. Coming up on Saturday night, $320 million, your estimated cash value. $150,800,000. Last night's numbers, 24, 28, 40, 63, 65. Powerball was 20. The power play multiplier was 3. And you got a chance for a big number, a big deposit into that checking account if you win this thing now.
Well, I'm hoping your guy that's $300 million or higher, we see his name on there. That would be apropos. He has
me too, because I think he'd be generous with me.
Yeah, throw a bill my way. I'm good. The double play, numbers from Wednesday, March the 5th, 22, 36, 39, 45, 50, Powerball of 14. You had Mega Millions with no jackpot winner yet, and you got a drawing on Friday, March the 7th for $233 million. The estimated cash on that around $110 million. Numbers from Tuesday, March the 4th, 14, 19, 47, 52, and 70. No wonder nobody won. And a Mega Ball of 6 and a Mega Power multiplier of 2 there.
That's right. Mississippi Match 5, no jackpot winner there, $362,000. The estimated jackpot for tonight's drawing. Last night's numbers 6, 16, 17, 27, and 31. Give me some cash 3 and some cash 4.
Well, cash 3, 500 Wednesday midday, 005. The evening, 306. Cash 4, $5,000 midday numbers, 4178. The evening drawing, 8353. Fireball of 3 and a cash pop of 5 in the midday. The evening fireball of 6 with a cash pop of 13.
All right, here's the tongue twister. The $5 Pink Panther Diamond Tripler bonus promotion is rolling on. The second of 8 drawings in the Pink Panther Diamond Tripler bonus promotion will be held later today. The announcement of 6 winning cities. Players can enter their non-winning Pink Panther Diamond Tripler tickets into the Mississippi Lottery Second Chance portal for a chance to win the $100,000 Second Chance prize after the game ends, plus additional bonus promo prizes ranging from $100 gift cards all the way to $25,000 in cash. That's through the end of May 29th. Check out the lottery's social media channels and their website, mslottery.com, to see the winner cities and also all the prizes and all the rules. Hey, heads up. Some of you being very irresponsible with your money. Very irresponsible. Time is running out for you. One of you is holding a $100,000 Powerball ticket. You bought the darn thing at Warrior Express in Pontotoc, and you have 7 days to claim your $100,000. So get on it. One of you has a Lotto America ticket worth $20,000. You bought it at Be Quick in Columbia. You've got until March 17th. That's 11 days. Get on it. One of you has a Mega Millions ticket worth $30,000. Bought it at Circle K in Jackson. You've got until March 19th to collect your money. So get on it. MSLottery.com. That's your Mississippi Lottery update. 7 o'clock hour, Mornings with Richard Cross on Super Talk Mississippi. We got the news, and then we got more news with you.
The views and opinions expressed by the hosts, guests, and callers on this show are not the opinions of TeleSouth Communications, its management, or advertisers.
Waking up Mississippi. From South Haven to Scuba, it's Mornings with Richard Cross on Super Talk Mississippi.
Strange, but not a stranger. I'm an ordinary guy, burning down the house. Hold tight. Wait till the party's over.
7 o'clock hour, good morning to you. Some of you slipping out the door, headed to the office this morning. Thanks for joining us. Others of you slipping out the door or sprinting out the door, trying to get kiddos to school or maybe get yourself to school on time. Be careful. Beautiful morning across the Magnolia State. Still a little cool. Spring's coming, though. You got trees and flowers and shrubs and bushes that, if you look really closely, you've got those little baby blooms that have not popped yet, but they will pretty darn soon. Spring, very, very close. Don't forget, just public service announcement. Lance going to remind you of this tomorrow. I am putting the onus on you to remind our wonderful listeners, Lance, tomorrow that this weekend you will spring forward. You will turn your clocks ahead 1 hour. Perhaps that reminder not as necessary as it once was because, your phone does it for you and it's smart enough to figure out the alarm clock also. But that is coming up this weekend. Which means daylight until about 7:30.
Well, I'll get to do it Friday, and then I'm sure we'll announce it a couple of times on the Garden Mama Show and Handyman Saturday. So we'll get you covered on
all over that.
Yes, exactly,
all over it. C Spire text line is open to you at 601-879-4395. 601-879-4395. Whether you are looking for the best in wireless, 5G nationwide coverage, the best in business IT services. They've got fiber internet that will power your business plus a whole suite of IT services. Or you are looking for blazing fast internet in your home. You can do that with fiber to the home. C-Spire's got you covered. Find them online at cspire.com. C-Spire, customer inspired. This hour of Mornings with Richard Cross brought to you by MWG Employer Services. Running a business is tough. And if you're struggling with HR, benefits, and payroll, you are not alone. That's where MWG Employer Services comes in. They can provide a full range of employer services plus a custom plan that fits you. Give them a call today. The number, 601-206-7966, or go to mwgemployerservices.com. Mentioned this yesterday, but only briefly. The Supreme Court, in a 5-4 ruling yesterday, said that Donald Trump and the Trump administration has got to resume payments of almost $2 billion to foreign aid programs that fall under the USAID. There are a lot of people that reacted with disappointment to that yesterday because two of the justices are Republican appointees from along the way, including Chief Justice John Roberts, who is, based on most of his rulings, not super conservative. And a lot of people said Amy Coney Barrett has just absolutely been a disappointment. The Supreme Court is supposed to be a nonpartisan entity. We know that. We know it's not. But you got one of the most scathing dissenting opinions that Samuel Alito has ever written. Justice Alito, with whom Justices Thomas Gorsuch and Kavanaugh joined in a dissenting opinion from the denial of the application to vacate the order. Justice Alito wrote this: does a single district court judge who likely lacks jurisdiction have the unchecked power to compel the government of the United States to pay out and probably lose forever $2 billion taxpayer dollars? The answer to that question should be an emphatic no, but a majority of this court apparently thinks otherwise. I am stunned. That's about as strong a language as you're going to find in a dissenting opinion from the Supreme Court, and maybe the strongest dissenting opinion that Samuel Alito has ever written. Goes on to write, in capsule form, this is what happened. Respondents are a group of American businesses and nonprofits that receive foreign assistance funds from the State Department and the U.S. Agency for International Development, that's USAID. They brought a suit and claimed that the current administration's temporary pause on foreign assistance payments is unlawful. On February 13th, the district court issued a temporary restraining order requiring the government to halt its funding pause. It based that decision on a finding that respondents are likely to succeed in showing that the government violated the Administrative Procedure Act, or the APA. After issuing the TRO, the district judge grew frustrated with the pace at which funds were being disbursed, and on February 25th, he issued a second order requiring the government to pay out approximately $2 billion. The judge brushed aside the government's argument that sovereign immunity barred this enforcement order, and he took two steps, unless corrected, that would prevent any higher courts from reviewing and possibly stopping the payments. He labeled the order as a non-appealable TRO, and he demanded that the money be paid out within 36 hours. Certainly you can debate the Supreme Court decision to uphold the lower court ruling. And clearly, because this ruling was put in place and because it was upheld, the TRO was upheld by the Supreme Court, it's lawful. That doesn't make it right. Explain to me how it is, and this is kind of rhetorical. I'm not literally asking you to explain to me. Explain to me how it makes sense that a district court with a judge who was appointed by, and by the way, I don't agree with this whether it is a liberal or a conservative judge, a judge that was appointed by a Democrat or a Republican. Explain to me how it is that a district court has the ability to tell the executive branch and the President of the United States, no, you cannot do this as it pertains to disbursement of funds. Maybe it should be okay. Maybe that's what we want. Is that what we want in the United States? We want district court level judges, not Supreme Court judges, but district court level judges, many of whom are partisan, and we have seen that over and over and over again in the rulings. Maybe we want them to have the ability to just dictate what the president is and is not able to do. And again, I'm talking about both sides of the aisle. If Donald Trump appoints district court judges, and I have said to you in the past that it may be the most important responsibility that exists for a president, because it has the ability to shape rulings going forward more than anything else. So if Donald Trump appoints a judge, and a few years from now we've got a Democrat president who, by law, has the power to put orders in place through executive order, should a Donald Trump appointed judge have the ability to overrule the president of the United States? Not on a matter of legality, but rather on a decision that the president has or makes that is within his authority through his executive powers. And conversely, should a judge appointed by a Democrat president or a liberal president have the ability to dictate what a Republican president does or doesn't do with his executive powers that are granted through the Constitution? Now, some of you responding on the C Spire text line, and we'll get to some of your responses coming up here in just a second. I can't get my mouse to work. That's a problem.
Well, the interesting part of that is
here we go.
It's the Department of the State versus the AIDS Vaccine Advocacy Coalition with Alito J dissenting. The AIDS Vaccine Advocacy Coalition.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. You know what I'd like is give me an opt-out on where I want my tax dollars to go. If anything's going overseas, give me an opt-out on it. I'd prefer to help people here in this country that need stuff.
I think this is a smart response. It was upheld based on procedure, maybe, rather than substance. I think that's absolutely right. Jim in Caledonia says it sounds like some of these folks have skin in the game. Mose says the president needs line item veto power to get rid of waste like this. David in Tupelo, regarding the ruling, it's even crazier that it was foreign aid, right? Aid outside of our country.
There you go.
Quick time out. We got more coming up with you. This is Mornings with Richard Cross on SuperTalk, Mississippi.
From the
Want to know what's happening in Mississippi politics?
Yes.
You're in the right place. Mornings with Richard Cross on Super Talk, Mississippi.
When all in all it's just like you, we love beyond you. That sound fine, so I see it sometime. In my Lord, do the future rapper, showing the time. Okay, that's not okay.
Good to be with you this morning. This is Mornings with Richard Cross on Super Talk, Mississippi. Love to hear from you on the C Spire text line. Coming up in our next segment, we will visit with Michael Watson, the Secretary of State. Had an interesting op-ed that you can read on supertalk.fm talking about the importance of the upcoming municipal elections and how those should be a priority for you. We will unpack that and more with Secretary of State. Also, Jay McDaniel will join us in the 8 o'clock hour. He's the executive director of the Mississippi Gaming Commission. We'll talk with him about the efforts to keep the mobile sports betting bills alive in the legislature. Update from the Gaming Commission on what's happening here in the Magnolia State in the gaming world. Good to be with you. You can join us on the C Spire text line at 601-879-4395. Yesterday, Donald Trump sent a message via Truth Social and then X, telling Hamas shalom. He wrote this: Shalom, Hamas, means hello and goodbye. You can choose. Release all of the hostages now, not later, and immediately return all of the dead bodies of the people you murdered, or it is over for you. Only sick and twisted people keep bodies, and you are sick and twisted. I am sending Israel everything it needs to finish the job. Not a single Hamas member will be safe if you don't do as I say. I have just met with your former hostages whose lives you have destroyed. This is your last warning. For the leadership, now is the time to leave Gaza while you still have a chance. Also, to the people of Gaza, a beautiful future awaits, but not if you hold hostages. If you do, you are dead. Make a smart decision. Release the hostages now, or there will be hell to pay later. Signed, Donald J. Trump, President of the United States of America.
You think maybe some of those guys are a little skeptical about opening the post, given what happened to their phones a while back? Like, whoa, I don't know about this. He seems serious.
There is one thing that is abundantly clear in this post on Truth Social from Donald Trump. He's not being ambiguous. He has issued the warning multiple times, and it sounds like this is the last warning that Donald Trump is going to issue to Hamas. All that negotiating, all that, this hostage for that hostage, and we'll give you 4 and you get 30, all that's over. He said, release them now. Release the bodies now, or you are over.
I have a question for you. If Israel would have just invaded Gaza and grabbed hundreds of hostages and went back to Israel and put them in bunkers and beat them up and cut fingers off and all that stuff and held them and kept the bodies, what do you think the public outcry would be right now?
It would be significant globally.
Think there'd be a lot of people, sitting there supporting Israel globally, and it seems like there's a huge support, even in this country, for Palestine and the folks that have done this on purpose.
Well, there absolutely is, and we've seen those protests all over the United States, particularly on college campuses. It's one of the reasons that it is one of the reasons you had the executive order from Donald Trump about illegal protests on college campuses, where he very clearly laid out that if a college campus allows an illegal protest, we're not talking about a First Amendment safe space protest. We're talking about an illegal protest where you have occupation of buildings and you interrupt class schedules and you just kind of throw out all the law, then federal funding will stop to that university or that college. And those were largely directed at the pro-Palestinian protests. Going back to the Supreme Court ruling from a second ago, Scott and Clinton says if the funds were specifically codified in an appropriation bill, yes, the courts should intervene. If the funds were designated by the State Department from undesignated funds by a grant, the court should stay out of it. I think that's a really good point, Scott. If Congress allocated funds, then an executive order should not be able to overrule the allocation of those funds. Now, it's possible that an executive order can dictate how much is paid out to the entities. We'll get to that in just a second. Congress needs to act toward the USAID mess. As I texted right after the election, the Republicans love to win the wedding, the election, but they forget to win the marriage, which is governing. Not a bad example. Is Truth Social, our Truth Social and X, good ways to get a message to Hamas? Somebody said, I'm dictating while I'm driving, so if something's misspelled, I apologize. That's from Kim in Eupora. I think Donald Trump's been fairly effective in getting his message out through social media platforms.
I mean, I've seen him. He's using every platform available, it seems. He's getting it out there.
Yeah. Yeah, there's not going to be any there's not going to be a platform to stand on for Hamas to go, well, we didn't know. We didn't see that. We didn't hear. Yeah, you did.
I bet he's even got walkie-talkies if he's serious.
Somebody's got walkie-talkies.
You know he does.
Mossad's got them.
Mm-hmm.
So, going along with the message a second ago from Scott and Clinton, Elon Musk was on Capitol Hill yesterday meeting with Republicans, discussing Doge cuts and the possibility of turning those cuts into law. Now, you know that you've got a numbers issue in the Congress, but perhaps there is a way around the numbers issue that might give Doge more powerful. Elon Musk reportedly learned about something new yesterday called budget rescission. The AP describes it as an obscure legislative tool that could bring legal heft to federal budget slashing efforts from Doge. Musk met with Republican senators in a lunch on Capitol Hill yesterday after the Supreme Court issued a setback to the Trump administration's efforts to freeze that $2 billion that we were talking about in foreign aid. As he opened the private session, Musk led with a message urging Congress to act. By the way, they had fried catfish at lunch.
Oh, yeah, I was loving that.
Yeah. Senators told him, though, about this possibility that the White House could put the billions of dollars of savings that Musk has amassed through Doge into what is called a budget rescission package and then send the package to Congress for a vote. Why is this significant? Because it takes a simple majority vote to pass the budget rescission package. So it would take 51 Senate votes and a majority in the House. Lindsey Graham, the senator from South Carolina, about Musk said he was so happy he didn't know that this was a possibility. Musk said, there's a lot of room, a lot of opportunity to improve expenditures in the government, and we're making good progress. Now, Musk did say to senators, we're going to make mistakes in this process, which was pretty candid. But he followed that up with, we're going to quickly correct any mistakes that we make. John Thune half joked that he was a little worried after Musk gave out his cell phone number for senators to call with any concerns. I thought, okay, his phone's going to start blowing up. He may want to change his number. Josh Hawley, the Republican senator from Missouri, said senators seem to be asking for better communication, wanting to know what is going to happen next with Doge. But he also said, I don't know that anyone at the White House knows what's going to happen next. Musk's team seems to just go from one thing to the next. Rand Paul, for his part, says, I love what Elon is doing. I love cutting into waste. I love finding all the crazy crap that we're spending overseas. But to make it real, to make it go beyond the moment of the day, it needs to come back in the form of a rescission package. This is going to be really interesting to see. Really interesting to see how it unfolds. Republican from North Carolina, Richard Hudson, said Elon doesn't fire people, it's the agencies. And we found out yesterday that there's a plan in place to fire 70,000 workers from the Department of Veterans Affairs. We'll see how this plays out. There's a whole lot more to come. Rand Paul pointed out we're not just getting rid of people that we actually need, and we're not overdoing it. We do need a smaller government. We do need less federal workers, but anytime there's a transition, it's difficult. A lot happening in Washington, D.C., and a lot of what's happening could affect Mississippians. So will municipal elections. Michael Watson, Secretary of State, talks about that next. This segment of Mornings with Richard Cross is brought to you by Covington County Hospital in Collins, where your health matters.
Mornings with Richard Cross on SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Welcome to the show.
Welcome again to Mornings with Richard Cross on SuperTalk, Mississippi. Thanks for spending part of your morning with us. Happy to welcome the Secretary of State of the state of Mississippi, Michael Watson, He joins us on the phone this morning. Mr. Secretary, good morning to you.
Morning, my friend. How are you today?
Doing well. Really appreciate some of your time. An interesting op-ed that you wrote. You can read it on supertalk.fm. Got it out there in some other places. And you wrote in part, Secretary Watson, while electing the country's next commander-in-chief is momentous, selecting the right leaders to govern Mississippi's communities is paramount. The government closest to the people is vitally important to maintain transparency, accessibility, and efficient and cost-effective local government. Citizens must engage in the upcoming municipal elections. You've heard it said often, and I guess I've said it often as well, that all politics are local. That is absolutely evident as we move toward these municipal elections with primaries just around the corner. Talk to us a little bit more about the importance in your mind of the local elections.
Yeah, Richard, and look, you get excited about the presidential race, and rightfully so. It's really important for the future of our country, as well as how the federal government and state governments interact. That said, when you think about government and what can impact you much more quickly than anything else, it is your local government. When we think about our policemen, our firemen, when we think about driving our kids to school, and there's a big pothole that the government won't fix, that's the mayor and the aldermen or the council members, depending on where you are. Those are the ones the things that really matter to day-to-day life, and that's where those decisions are made at the local level when it comes to those issues. So I think people need to understand. Yeah, it is vitally important to think about state elections and federal elections. But for those elections at the local level, they're going to impact your life much more quickly on the everyday, side of things. You've got to pay attention to these municipal elections. So it's really important to think about who's going to be my mayor, who's going to be my council members, who are going to make those decisions on which roads do we fix, on infrastructure. That look, it's not very sexy, but you got a pipe that busts under the road and bubbles up, and the road deteriorates, and sinkholes happen, and those are things that are important to you going to school with your children, going to church, going to shop. So really important to make sure that we're focusing on these municipal elections.
So in terms of the primary, the deadline to register to vote, if you're not currently registered, has already passed, but that doesn't mean that you are precluded from voting in upcoming municipal elections and in runoffs, or certainly in the general election, right?
Right. For the general, make sure that you are registered by May 5th. I was talking to my guys today, and Cinco de Mayo is a well-known date, so keep that in your head. So make sure you're registered by then if you're not registered already to vote in those municipal elections.
I'm going to have a 15-year-old on Cinco de Mayo as well. Boy, time goes in a hurry. Oh, it goes fast. You know that as well. I want to go back to the all politics is local. I think you laid that out pretty well. There's no question that's what is happening in Washington, D.C., maybe more than ever before, affects Americans. It affects our pocketbooks. It affects the things that we're passionate about, that we believe in. Whether you're a conservative or you're liberal or more liberal. But in terms of what your local community looks like, how the place you live operates on a day-to-day basis, how taxes are assessed or reduced, whatever the case may be, that all comes from the mayor and your local board of supervisors and your local board of aldermen or city council. That stuff really, really matters, and it does affect us on a more day-to-day basis probably than even decisions that are being made at the federal level make.
You're right. And just yesterday, I was visiting my buddy Bill Rivers, and Bill he has a plant operation, and he had just gotten a shipment of soil that he uses in his plants, and was showing me the notice that he got on the increase because of the tariffs. So, again, let's keep our eye on the ball here. It's a big deal what's going on at the federal level. So I don't want to dismiss that. But when we're talking about just everyday life, the things that are going to impact you. Again, we talk about our policemen, our firemen. If you're in a community that you don't feel quite safe, at the end of the day, that really goes to municipal leadership. Are your mayor and your council member or alderman, are they doing the right things, getting the resources that your local police need? Are they making sure that your firefighters have the resources that they need? So if something happens, God forbid, they can respond in a quick fashion. It's those little things that we sometimes tend to just take for granted, Richard, that really, at the end of the day, are the things that are so much more important than something that may be happening at the federal level. These are things that are going to impact your children, your families. Again, we go back to roads and bridges, local communities, and drainage, infrastructure, garbage collection. The things that if they don't go right, you're going to notice them tomorrow. Those are the things, again, that we've got to focus on to make sure that we understand who are making those decisions. And one of the things that we try to do at Secretary of State's office through our Elections 101 campaign, Liz Johnson and her team have done a great job. Kyle Kirkpatrick, our elections guy, really is trying to make people understand who's responsible for what. And I think taking that from just elections in that space over to municipal government, what are they responsible for? And when you research that and understand, oh, wait a minute, these are the decisions that everyday life are going to impact me. And those are the ones that you got to pay attention to. And again, sometimes we just get googly-eyed for the presidential election, and it's very important. I'm not taking away from that. But let's remember, these everyday decisions that are going to impact your lives, at the local level are so very important.
And this is not a micro message. This is basically the entire state of Mississippi. Most every city and town in the state is going to be dealing with municipal elections in the coming months.
That's right. And look, and it starts there. A lot of times we think about kind of, if you look at it like athletics, the farm system, many times you see your local level elected officials start to move up the ranks. So it's like the farm system there. So you want to make sure that you've got good people that are in the system that are eventually maybe moving up to do bigger and better things. And it starts everywhere. And I talk about accountability so much, Richard, you know that. But it is at every level. And so if your mayor has done a great job, then, maybe he or she deserves a second term or third term, whatever the number is. If your council members have made some bad decisions, it's time for them to go home. So make sure we're paying attention, and we get excited about elections. We forget about the hard part of holding them accountable. This is your opportunity to hold them accountable. You got things that are not going in the right direction in your city. You need to replace your leadership. So this is your opportunity to get that local level voice in.
There has been a significant amount of debate and fanfare, we'll call it that, related to a couple of bills related to elections and early voting in the state of Mississippi. You and I have talked about early voting in the past, and I think your stance has been that your preference would be for all of the voting to happen by paper ballot with voter ID on Election Day, but you also recognize that some of the winds were changing as it pertained to early voting. What is your take on the back and forth with regard to early voting, the insertion that the governor had, inserting himself into that debate, particularly with Senator Jeremy England, and some of the back and forth about that bill?
Richard, I'm reading a book right now on high road leadership, so I'm going to leave that the governor sees alone. So on elections, we look at a couple of things with elections.
Come on, it's not good radio,
as you well know. As you well know, my preference is Election Day is something that's important. We talk about the community getting excited. We just honored poll workers who have served for 50 or more years in the state. There were 8 of them there. And to talk to them, to see their community members come in and cast their ballots, and a chance to catch up and visit. But I told them that your faces, when they walk in that door, they know it's going to be done right because they're familiar with you. You've been doing this. And just that community spirit that goes along with that on Election Day is just special. And we've got paper verifiable trails across this state now in every county. So when people talk about paper ballots, come to Mississippi. That's how we vote. So, that is my preference. That said, I understand some states have done it well when it comes to early voting. And I know Chairman England is looking at that and has worked on that for a while. I think the Lieutenant Governor has been supportive of that for a long time. So if they're going to do it, my whole assertion was just let me help you make sure this is as secure as possible. Let's talk about the logistics. When you think about a small county, and let's say on Election Day, they're used to, a certain turnout. Well, unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on the voter, they decide, well, I don't want to vote on election day anymore. I'm going to go early vote. If you see a huge shift in that number in these small counties, they're going to be overwhelmed. They don't get to stop issuing marriage licenses. They don't get to stop doing the work they have to do with the court system as far as circuit clerks go. They don't get to stop those things. They got to continue doing that. So if they get inundated with people coming in to vote, you're going to jam up these courthouses, and many times maybe it's on a small square, and they're going to jam up traffic on the squares. It's just the logistics have to be further diagnosed before you can really get this thing across the finish line. Now, on the House side, my understanding
can you hold that thought and let's continue this conversation in just a second?
Of course, we'll do.
Michael Watson, Secretary of State. We'll pick this up on the other side of a quick timeout. This is Mornings with Richard Cross on Super Talk Mississippi. We'll wrap up the 7 o'clock hour coming up next.
Find out what's happening across your state. Mornings with Richard Cross on Super Talk Mississippi.
Great to be with you. Mornings with Richard Cross, Super Talk Mississippi. You can join the conversation on the C Spire text line at 601-879-4395. We're visiting with the Secretary of State, Michael Watson. So, Mr. Secretary, we were talking about the early voting bills and the debate that we've had in the legislature about that. And you mentioned that, some of the smaller counties with, smaller staffs in the circuit clerk's office, if an early voting bill was in place, could potentially be overwhelmed. Is the counter to that, though, if I think you mentioned marriage license and some of the other things that have to happen there, is the counter to that, though, not that if you've got a smaller circuit clerk's office, they probably aren't overwhelmed with marriage license applications and some of the other day-to-day duties? Are we sure that as they exist, they couldn't handle early voting?
Yeah, I mean, that's obviously a counter to it, no doubt. That said, they still have court, they still have other things that just because it's a small county, they're still going to have things that are going on.
Right.
But look, again, it may be a lesser of a burden on them as opposed to maybe a larger county, but you've got some that literally have a clerk and 2 deputies. That's 3 people. So, you got a smaller county, lesser population. I completely understand that argument. And we've talked about that. Well, does the state maybe talk about possibly providing for an additional, person during that window, whatever they come up with, if it's 15 days, 12 days, whatever the number is. So there are different ways to handle it. I'm not saying it's not doable. I'm just trying to think about, what are all the possible pitfalls that we need to avoid if we're going to do this.
Was this a good piece of legislation, regardless of whether you're for it or against it, in terms of the way the bill was written in the Senate that Chairman England put out and the governor was very much against, and it appears the House is not going to go down this road? Was it good legislation? Was it sound?
I think Chairman England is an intelligent individual. I think he's done his homework. Again, I'm coming from a different lens in that I like Election Day. So as far as him putting the work in, there shouldn't be any question of that. He does his homework. He takes time to make sure that he's trying to draft things correctly. The things that I told him last year were a couple things. Number one, again, the logistics piece. Number two, if we're going to do this, then maybe let's do away with some of the mail-in options. And if we're also going to do this, let's do it, let's take it down from 45, regular absentee voting. Let's take it down from 45 to 30 days. A couple of other things that I wanted to do to further secure elections if we were going to go in this direction. So I would have added some things. That said, again, different. That's why the legislature is a body of folks from all different walks of life that have different ideas about things, and that's how legislation is crafted. Somebody's got to come up with the idea, and then people shoot holes in it and try to make it better. So, look, as far as the question goes, whether or not he prepared and did what he thought was the right thing to do, I don't think anybody can question that.
Visiting with Michael Watson just for a couple more minutes, Secretary of State. There are some statewide officials who have been very, very active in the social media channels and have kind of taking some shots at other statewide electeds. You got plans to jump into that fray anytime soon?
Richard, I was talking to our co-op youth leadership group last week, and I've done it before. I've said some things on Twitter, and sometimes that I probably shouldn't have said, and that doesn't do any of us any good. To that extent, I've reached out to a couple folks and asked them to go to lunch and let's see if we can repair that relationship, if there is any need to repair it. That said, look, this book is jumping all over my toes about highway leadership, and I think Mississippi deserves better than what they're getting on social media. From time to time, leadership matters, and I don't care if it's on social media or at the Capitol or at a speech or look, we got an issue right now at the legislature where people are mad at each other because, hey, well, his name's on that bill, and I don't like what he said, so I'm going to kill his bill. When the bill itself had great policy, that's not what Mississippi deserves. So we've got to do better in that sense. And look, again, I admit I've done it before, so I'm not innocent. I'm getting better at that. My wife has told me I will be getting better at that. So
good clear direction at home. That's always that's always important. I don't know that you're going to take the bait on this, but as a former legislator who's now in a statewide office and doesn't really have a dog in the fight other than the fact that you're a Mississippian, have you got thoughts on where we are in the tax debate, the tax reform conversation?
Richard, I'm going to tell you something. When I sat down yesterday again, when I saw that tariff increase on soil, my buddy Bill Rivers' place, I'm not so sure. We got to be very careful with this. Yes, do I want to get rid of the income tax? I think that's fantastic. It's a huge selling point when we're talking about people locating their new businesses in different parts of the country. Love it. But we've got to be responsible, and to the extent that we've increased spending the last few years on new programs here and new programs there, I have not seen reciprocal cuts. And if we're not going to be adults and talk about let's cut spending, we better be very careful about how we approach a tax cut. Again, I'm for it, and maybe it happens long term, but if we're not going to be. I get so frustrated, Richard. I'm sorry, I'm on this soapbox.
It's all right. We only got 15 seconds till the break.
And limited government, but we do not cut spending. We've got to cut spending first.
All right. That's Secretary of State Michael Watson. Next time I might ask him about his future, but we don't have time to do that today. Thank you, Mr. Secretary.
Thank you, sir. Talk soon.
Mornings with Richard Cross, Super Talk, Mississippi. What did that laugh mean there at the end? We'll be back.
From the White House to your hometown, this is where you find out what's happening. Mornings with Richard Cross on Super Talk, Mississippi.
I don't see you guys raising the kind of mate I'm contemplating. I'd let you watch, I would invite you, but the queens we use would not excite you. So you better go back.
Once again, good morning. Welcome to Mornings with Richard Cross on Super Talk, Mississippi. Wherever you're listening, however you're listening, thanks for joining the conversation. And if you want to interact, you can do so on the C Spire text line at 601-879-4395. I'm your host, Richard Cross. Lance Tolbert in the studio. Going to continue on the guest line this morning. First-time conversation for me with Jay McDaniel. He's the executive director of the Mississippi Gaming Commission. Jay, good morning. Thanks so much for some of your time.
Yeah, good morning, Richard. Good to be on.
Absolutely. Let's jump right in. By the way, if you hear a little bit of knocking in the background, Jay was telling us during the break, he's got some construction going out, but it sounds a little bit like a slot machine. When that jackhammer's popping, I feel like that is very fitting to be in the background for this conversation.
Yeah, I apologize for that. I probably should have moved to a different office. It's been miserable, I'll be honest. I'm about to move to our Biloxi office if this keeps up.
I don't blame you at all. There's lots that I want to get into with you this morning, but I think top of mind for most people is the debate, the legislation that appears to once again not really be going anywhere, or not seeing light at the end of the tunnel for mobile sports betting. From your perspective, where are we on that as we move into the final few weeks of this legislative session?
Yeah, I think I read an article on y'all's site. Caleb Saylor's called it, on life support, and that's how I would describe it, Richard. The House last year and this year, Representative Uri, who's chair of the Gaming committee over there has passed pretty comprehensive mobile sports betting legislation. Last year it passed the House overwhelmingly, but did not come out of the Senate Gaming Committee. Same situation this year. So it did die in committee, but what has happened now is there are 2 Senate bills that came over to the House Gaming Committee, where the House Gaming Committee inserted the mobile sports into those bills. Their original intent was not that, but now they're in there. So they're still alive with that, from that aspect, but now that's got to go back over, and at some point, someone in the Senate and the House are going to have to sit down and agree to something if we are going to see it pass.
What is the official stance of the Gaming Commission on mobile sports betting?
Yeah, we typically, with any bill, we typically don't get involved because we were created to regulate the industry, not to dictate policy. But we're not trying to block it. What I would say is if they're going to pass it, I want it done right. We're going to regulate it right. We are preparing. I visit with my counterparts in Nevada and New Jersey, Louisiana, and what have you seen that's wrong? What have you seen that's right? And we are just preparing ourselves for the day if it does pass, that we're going to do it the best we can. So I do think that the House bill that passed had those kind of provisions in it to do it the right way. Some protections in there. I think there's some additional things we would need to do. We'll be tracking things like responsible gaming. Are we seeing increases, in problem gambling? But as far as whether the bill passes or not, we just try and stay out of it. And if the policymakers decide to do it, we're gonna make sure it's done right. I do think, obviously, it needs to be done by our casinos that are already doing it. So I think that in the legislation, that even if you have a DraftKings, they're going to be partnered with a brick and mortar casino. I just think that's the way to do it.
Well, and to me, that's really the fascinating part of the debate. I've talked with some legislators kind of on background to more fully understand this, to understand what the opposition is and, what the pros are on it as well. And I'm wondering from your perspective, and as you've looked at this legislation, is this simply about, do we give Mississippians the opportunity to place a sports bet on their mobile device, or is there more to it? Is there something else going on that is causing some senators or some legislators in the House to go, hold on, we need to make sure that this is right? Do you see there's something else there?
I think there are, multiple factors. I think y'all have done a good job. You've had some of these representatives and senators on, and they've been in the public about why the Senate's against it. I think for the most part, it's been pretty public that I think there's concerns on the Senate side as to, any expansion of gaming. Are we looking at everything? Are we, are all the concerns being addressed? I think at the end of the day, Richard, you have 26 casinos in the state run by 15 different companies, and they are not all aligned on it.
No,
and when not everyone is aligned, that seems to muck things up. To be fair, those things need to be looked at. But, if we have an operator that's not for it, why are they not for it? And they're not all the same opinions. There's different reasons. My response to all of that is just, this is the frustrating thing for me as a regulator. The illegal market is getting bigger by the day, and we are doing our best to fight it. But when you talk about tackling offshore illegal operators that can get their apps onto your phone, and if I stop one, 2 more are going to pop up in its place. I do think the legalization in our state is one of the things that would help tackle that. So if I were to say why we should do it, that would just be one of the major reasons, is that we have an illegal market taking money out of our state with no tax consequences, putting no brick and mortar, anything into our state.
I feel like on a surface level, Mississippians who are either for this or against it are only looking at their user experience, right? Can I grab my phone from my couch and get a little action on a game? But behind the scenes, I had one legislator tell me that there's an issue of data collection that is real in terms of, so Jay, if you're sitting on your couch, the casino that you're betting through, they want your information, and they're going to protect that. But if this goes to one of these national brands like FanDuel or DraftKings, they also want that data. Does that play a role in this as to who gets the data, how much it's protected, whether that revenue stays in Mississippi or ends up, in I don't even know where the headquarters is for those big companies, but in other states?
Yeah, I think that's one of the concerns. I think that's a fair concern that you're hearing out of the Senate is, while you may have a brick and mortar casino that's running the book, you've got this app from an out-of-state, platform, and how much, we would license them, we would have oversight, but we maybe can't control what they do with that data. And they're going to be sending, while you might get a mailer from the borough saying, come visit our property, you'd be getting something from this platform saying, come sign up and do this. So yeah, it just adds more layers to that. So yeah, I do think it's a legitimate concern. Again, it's one of those things though, Richard, where I would rather someone be data collecting with a licensed, someone we can oversee, someone we could revoke their license if they do something wrong, as opposed to Curacao or Costa Rican based business that's going to do who knows what with your information and is using it for other illicit purposes. So yeah, it is a valid concern, but again, it's something that I hope that our residents aren't using other options, because you don't know what they're doing with your data.
I think one of the most frustrating things for, whether you're talking about state legislation or federal legislation, is you can't just have a bill about one topic. You have other stuff that gets rolled into it as well. And there's been a conversation about tidelands and funding for that, and taking care of things on the Mississippi Gulf Coast that need to be taken care of, and perhaps either holding a bill hostage for that in order to get this done, or trying to roll it all into one. Where does that play into this conversation?
Well, it's a good point. That's kind of where we are. We started the session with separate bills. We had a Tidelands bill.
Lance, did we lose Jay's audio?
Or written bill.
There we go. I'm sorry, Jay. If you could start over on that answer. I lost you just for a second.
Okay, yeah. It was a good point you raised, because you start the session with these independent bills. The bill on the Tidelands Act, which clarifies some language that I think is good. You had the mobile sports betting on the House. You have these independent bills. And then now here we are where they are. They're all bunched together, and if you don't have a compromise, they're going to all die. But yeah, that's definitely where we are right now. The Tidelands bill has the mobile sports betting language in it. There was a Senate Bill 2510 out of the Senate, which I was in favor of that, because it did increase criminal penalties on these illegal operators to felony levels. So that was going to help our efforts. Now mobile sports is in that, and I'm not faulting any. That's just the way sometimes legislation happens. But that's where we are now. It's going to be kind of an all or nothing on those questions, I believe. And maybe it helps. Maybe it helps it get through. But that's pretty much where we are right now.
Yeah. Have you got time to hang through the break? I got a couple more questions for you.
Sure.
All right. We're visiting with Jay McDaniel. He's the executive director of the Mississippi Gaming Commission. One of the things that I asked one of the legislators that I was talking to, and we'll get to this in just a second, is you understand the need to protect casinos in the state of Mississippi who have invested heavily in their properties. But when we look at this legislation, ultimately, are we taking into account what the people of Mississippi want, or is this just about corporations? We'll talk about that on the other side with Jay McDaniel. He's the executive director of the Mississippi Gaming Commission. You can join the conversation on the C Spire text line, 601-879-4395. Give your business the edge with gigabit fiber internet from C Spire. Quick timeout. We've got more with you, more with Jay McDaniel from the Mississippi Gaming Commission on the other side of this timeout.
Your day right. Mornings with Richard Cross on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Her love has no strength, shackles and chains, but I'm holding on for dear life.
Good to be with you on Mornings with Richard Cross. Jay McDaniel, the executive director of the Mississippi Gaming Commission, is my guest. And Jay, I was kind of outlining this before the break. I know you heard what I was saying. This is an issue with mobile sports betting, and I'm not not being accusatory. I understand that it's part of the process, but this feels like an issue that is being driven by lobbyists as opposed to being driven by legislators with the end user, the consumer, the Mississippian in mind. Do you think legislators are ultimately listening to the people who say, we want this or we don't want this, or is there something else that's driving the conversation far beyond what's best for Mississippians?
Well, I'm going to take Michael Watson's approach and maybe stay away from that one. But I will say this, the legislators, it's difficult because you have constituents that are individuals that want one thing. Some of your constituents are businesses, in your area that look at it a different way. I think there's certainly, they've got to listen to what the people want, and at the same time, what's good for, bringing in economic development to the area. And, if there's a fear that this could hurt one casino while one tells you it's going to help, they've got to weigh those. So it's complicated. I do think at the end of the day, I would tell you, just from the calls I get in my office, it does seem like mobile sports betting is something a lot of consumers want. Mm-hmm. If you look at the numbers in Louisiana and Tennessee and Arkansas, we were beating them in 2019, 2021, because we were the first ones out of the gate with retail, and our casinos were doing fantastic with it. Since they have opened mobile sports betting in those three states, we've gone down 10 to 15% every year. And so, there comes a point where, the numbers are there, our revenue is declining in sports betting. So you look at everything, what do the constituents want? What are our numbers doing? Are we going to try and make up? Is this one of the areas we want to try and make up revenue while we're talking about, tax revenue? So I just think there's a lot, there's a lot to consider. And I'll just, I'll leave it at that.
That's fair. Jay McDaniel, Executive Director, Mississippi Gaming Commission. You mentioned that some properties are for this, some properties are against this. I think most people know that you have casinos, resorts that are owned by multinational companies, huge entities, and then you've got some single owner casinos as well that are based here in Mississippi, and maybe it's only one property, in some cases a couple of properties. Does that seem to be the dividing line in which properties are for this and which properties are against this legislation?
Yeah, I think this has been publicized some. I think you're right. Obviously, we have major brands. We have MGM, Caesars, Boyd, Bally's, Penn, that all do this across the nation. Right. So, I think if you're a company like that, you're going to take the approach, we're already doing this in Michigan and Maryland and Nevada. Let's do it in Mississippi too. And then when you have operators that this is their only casino or they're regional based, maybe in another state that doesn't have it, it's going to be a difficult haul for them. And their view may be like, I'm fine with my product. I don't want another product that I can't compete with. And so it's just kind of natural that your big national operators are going to be more likely to lean toward this as opposed to a local. But I will say our local operators do a great job with their on-premises products. That's the reason most of them have stayed in business. We have 26 operators in a small population state because they do very well driving business into this state and doing things for this state. And so I think if it were to pass, I have little doubt they could make it work for them. I really do.
You have to have been around for a while to remember this, but casinos in Mississippi have come a long way since Splash opened its doors in Tunica County in, the early mid-'90s. And it was like a glorified trailer with a tent for people to stand under while they were waiting in line to get to the blackjack table. So certainly they're all very professional and very well-run operations. What about tax revenue, though? If you've got a Caesars or an MGM, is money that they generate through, if there was mobile sports betting, is that going back to Nevada, or does that stay in Mississippi?
Yeah, so the tax revenue generated in Mississippi, the tax revenue would absolutely have to stay in Mississippi. Okay. It goes into, right now, the bill that was first brought up had it going into the roads and bridges, the infrastructure, kind of like what our lottery does. They could earmark it for different things, but it would definitely stay in Mississippi. Now, other revenue people coming in, basically the profits they generate. Some of that goes back to Nevada. We hope they put it back into their property. But that's one thing I will say our operators do a really good job of is if there's money to reinvest, they want to reinvest it in Mississippi. And so, if you add mobile sports betting, the revenue coming in, where that goes, you would hope would be reinvested in their properties, but definitely the tax revenue goes into our state coffers.
Well, one of the early kind of opposition points that I heard to this was operators were concerned that they wanted to bring people into their brick and mortar locations. And if you legalized mobile sports betting, then those people weren't going to come in, and maybe they weren't going to also hit a slot machine or a blackjack table or eat or get a hotel room. And while I think maybe that issue still exists, I feel like some of them have kind of shifted that and like, okay, these are people that probably weren't coming to the casino, at least not most of them, to place a bet. This is about convenience and perhaps new customers. Have you heard both sides of that argument in conversations with gaming operators?
Yeah, definitely both sides. Some operators have data on that. Caesars operates in Louisiana. They just redid Caesars Palace in New Orleans, and the sports book there is beautiful. It's huge, and I don't think Caesars would have done that if they thought everybody was just going to go to the mobile app. They I think have data that has shown, people are going to come in for March Madness certainly in the Super Bowl. They like the social aspect of it. But then you have others, again, if you're a smaller operator and you don't have that large sports book and the fun environment, you may not have people come in. But I do think, as you said, Richard, I think there's people out there that want to do this. They're maybe in Tupelo or Oxford and a little too far to go to a casino and would say, I'm not going anyway, but if you give me this mobile app, I'll do it. And then certainly you have the people in North Mississippi that are driving across into Tennessee doing it, and maybe they'll stop doing that. You have people on the illegal side doing it that maybe will come to the legal market. And then the big one I point to is Alabama doesn't have it. I think you're going to have Alabama people driving into Mississippi to do it. So it's a tough, it's not an easy answer to say, will they, won't they? But at the end of the day, Louisiana is just a good one to look at. They've got both. They have about 10% of their revenue retail, 90% mobile. But that 10% retail is still as much as we do retail. So they didn't just all not do that. You have a combination there. But I think, and that's why I think the projections are pretty high for the revenue here, is that it will be much more than what we see in our retail market.
We had an issue pop up last year, and this has turned into legislation as well, in a debate in the House about a casino in Hinds County in Jackson. And it feels like that produced equal parts interest and angst among people that were out there. Does the Gaming Commission have an official stance on what that might look like, or whether or not you believe that should happen or shouldn't happen?
Definitely not on that one. I will say this, Richard. We've always been an open market state. We don't limit our licenses. Louisiana does. The fact that you're saying one casino in one specific location, that's definitely changes the game. If the legislature saw fit to do that, there would be reasons to do it. And I think it's purely an economic, they're looking at it from an economic standpoint. Jackson needs something. We believe this casino will help. So I don't like that method of picking one license. And I would certainly not want to be the one sitting here picking who it was. But, I do Burke and Jackson. I understand the desire to bring something in, but at the end of the day, I kind of like our open market system of, if you've got the money and the right location, you can do it. So if they did just change simply the location to be in Jackson, that would be one way to look at it. But you've got the Pearl River Resort, you've got the Vicksburg market. They're not gonna take that lying down.
No. Well, and I just wonder if it would set a precedent. I mean, would you have somebody pop up that says, hey, I want to open a sports book at the Lafayette County line so that we catch people that are coming in for an Ole Miss football game on Saturday and they stop in to place a bet on the way to the ball game?
Yeah, I mean, that's a definite fear. Is once you do it here, why not do it in, again, Oxford, Tupelo, Meridian, any state or any city that says, hey, this could help us, why not us? So I think that's why there's a lot more angst against that. And, that didn't even come off of the floor. So,
right.
it's one of those things, if again, I'll leave that up to the policymakers that are elected to do their job. And if they do it, we'll regulate it like we regulate everyone else. They wouldn't get any special treatment once they're open.
Jay, really appreciate your time. A fascinating conversation, and we'll see where all of this goes, whether it's in this legislative session or in a future one. Look forward to visiting with you again down the line. Thanks so much.
Yeah, enjoyed it. Thanks, Richard.
Jay McDaniel, Executive Director with the Mississippi Gaming Commission, joining us on Mornings with Richard Cross right here on Super Talk Mississippi. We've got more coming up with you this morning, about half an hour left, and plenty still to talk about, including a pause on tariffs for America's big three operators, automakers. Is this selective or is this wise? We're back right after this.
Good morning, everybody. Time to wake up.
Time to shine!
Start your day right. Mornings with Richard Cross on Super Talk Mississippi.
Back with you, Mornings with Richard Cross, Super Talk Mississippi. Couple of segments left on this Thursday. Thanks for being with us. Chris in Louisville says in the early 90s, when the first casino opened, I dropped by to take a look. They were actually charging $10 for admission. They had maxed out capacity and had a waiting line outside. That practice changed as soon as the second casino opened its doors in Mississippi. My, how things have changed. Chris, yes, Splash Casino, there was a cover charge to get in. It was the first, and that was a very profitable entity for a little while. And you're right, as more competition came in, things changed dramatically. The fortunes, literally and figuratively, of Tunica County changed pretty dramatically as well, at least for a little while. Obviously, as more and more gaming entities have come into Mississippi, it has changed as more Arkansas. I mean, when Southland Greyhound Park in West Memphis, Arkansas, redid its kind of casino operation, and they spent so much money on that had a pretty significant effect on some of those Tunica casinos. Many of them have changed hands over the course of time. It's interesting, though. Certainly has been fascinating to see the way that industry has evolved over the course of time. Jace says, I will not go to a casino, but I would make bets on my phone year-round. I think there are a lot of people that feel that way. If you live on the Gulf Coast, you've got a lot of places you can go, right? You got a lot of options. And probably there is a casino that is relatively close to you. If you live in or around Philadelphia, Mississippi, you can get to the sports book inside Timeout Lounge at the Golden Moon. They've been a great partner of ours at Super Talk Mississippi for a long time now, and they've really invested heavily in that. You can get there. If you live in Tunica County or you live in DeSoto County, it's not much of a stretch there, but I mean, we'll use Jackson. We'll use Lance as an example. Lives on the reservoir. It takes a little effort if you wanted to get to a sports book to place a bet. If you live in Oxford or Tupelo or Petal or wherever, it takes a little more effort. And you're probably not making the drive just to place a $25 or a $50 bet on the Alabama-Auburn game this Saturday.
I want those crab legs.
Well, yeah, spend a little money if you want those free things.
You got it. And, you're right, though. I mean, the sports betting in the mobile app, I mean, I loved your idea, honestly, about catching all the folks coming into the football games and let them spend a little of their money as they're coming in. And it seems interesting, but I'm like Jay, too. I wouldn't want to be the one trying to make the decision on who gets the contract for the casino in Jackson or how that works.
No, you're right.
It seems to be a mess that you'd have to deal with there. But, yeah, I mean, mobile gaming, people want it. That's the truth. Maybe. We don't have anybody on our text line, and we talk to a lot of folks here. Not one person says, that's a bad idea.
That's right. That's right. Somebody says it might increase gambling addiction. Yeah, that is a very real possibility when it is readily available to you and for you, the possibility of developing bad habits are there.
But, you can go do that already,
The possibility for developing bad habits are there in every walk of life. Beer is available to you. You get to decide if you drink 3 or you drink 33. Drinking 3, probably not a terrible life decision. Drinking 33, not a good idea. There's personal responsibility that's involved. There's self-discipline that's involved. There's knowing your limits that is involved. There's whether or not you can afford to buy 3 beers versus 33 beers. Same thing applies in gaming. Just because it's there doesn't mean you have to do it. Just because you do it doesn't mean you have to do it all the time. Just because there are 30 games or 300 events that are available for you to place a wager on doesn't mean you have to bet on 30 games or 300 games. And just because somebody has the ability to bet $500 per game and lose 10 games in a day and not have it affect their daily life doesn't necessarily mean that you can do that. Maybe your threshold is a $25 bet. And you can't afford to lose more than $100, and so you cap yourself at 3 games because of juice or 4 games with the juice. And yes, there's that possibility that you win all 4 games and you're $100 to the good, but if you're going to be a sports bettor, I promise I'm not preaching. I'm just talking about the reality of it based on the text about this could lead to folks being irresponsible. If you're going to be a sports bettor, you have to know what you can afford to lose if you're going to play the game.
There's a discipline to it, that's for sure.
And I'm sorry if it's oversimplifying it, Lance, but if you can't afford to do it, then you shouldn't do it.
Yeah, if you can't afford to lose what you're betting, then don't do it.
Yeah.
The same with investing or anything. People call it investing all the time, but you're picking a winner and a loser. You're speculating on what direction something's going to go. You hope it goes up if you went long. If you shorted it, you hope it goes down. That's gambling. It's speculation.
Yeah.
Now, again, we put fancy terms on it. Yeah.
It's speculation when the odds are stacked against you. There's a reason that there is an attractiveness for some to being a bookie, to being the house, to being the person that takes the bets instead of the person that places the bets, because it is rare, not saying it's never, but it is rare that the house loses. And it's even more rare that the house loses over an extended period of time. And the common thing that you hear is they don't build those big buildings on losses.
Mm-mm.
My thought is with sports betting in particular, and there are a lot of people that don't do it this way, you have to approach it. You have to approach it as a recreational activity with expendable income. And if you do that, you're going to be fine. If it's expendable income and you're approaching it as a fun recreational activity, you're probably going to be fine. If you are trying to figure out how to pay your mortgage this month based on laying 17 with Alabama, that is a really, really bad strategy. In the same way that betting on the midnight kickoff on Saturday night to try and make up for all the games you lost throughout the course of the day while the sun was still up tends to not be a great strategy either. Now, sometimes Pull it out of the fire. With Hawaii getting points at home with a 11:59 p.m. kickoff in the Central Time Zone. Maybe that's just exactly what you needed. But more times than not, when you start chasing it, gets you in a bad spot.
Yeah, is it anything? You just need to have a great discipline.
Yeah, and that's hard to do.
Yeah, it is. You go into something, though. You don't create your discipline once you've laid the money down. You always create the discipline before. You always have a sell strategy or a way to back out. And you need to do that in advance of gambling or speculating or investing, not after. Because emotions take over, and that's the worst case for your money, is your emotion.
Big three automakers are getting a 1-month reprieve on the tariffs that Donald Trump is putting in place for Canada and Mexico. Caitlin Collins from CNN asked Caroline Leavitt, the spokesperson for the White House and the president, about this yesterday.
One on the reprieve that is being granted to these three automakers for 1 month on the tariffs on Canada and Mexico. How did the president settle on 1 month?
Mm-hmm. The reciprocal tariffs will go into effect on April 2nd, and he feels strongly about that no matter what, no exemption, so that's where the 1 month comes from.
Does he expect them to be able to shift production within a month?
He told them that they should get on it, start investing, start moving, shift production here to the United States of America, where they will pay no tariff. That's the ultimate goal.
All right, so that's the explanation. You heard Donald Trump talk about this in his address to Congress the other night. The tariffs on Mexico and Canada went into place day before yesterday. What was it? Midnight. What's today? Thursday. It was midnight Tuesday night or midnight Monday night. So that's when they went into effect. The reciprocal tariffs that Donald Trump has talked about with all trade partners all over the world don't go into effect until April 2nd. So even though you have automakers that the United States deals with in Mexico and in Canada, the tariffs on those automakers have not yet gone into effect. They will go into effect when the reciprocal tariffs start on April 2nd. Back with you. We'll wrap it up coming up next.
From the Venom.
Start your day right.
Good morning, America. How are you?
Honestly, I have no idea.
Mornings with Richard Cross on SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Hey, you're sorry once again. You want me to take you back once more. You say you need a helping hand, but that's what you told me once before.
Mike and Madison on the C Spire text line. Multinational conglomerates are not going to make multi-year billion-dollar investment strategies based on transient tariffs that could be switched off tomorrow if the president changes his mind. The second most important thing to investors after profit is certainty. Tariffs are not a long-term strategy. That's from Mike and Madison. Unless, Mike, they are. They're not a long-term strategy unless, and I think the only way that they work, and I'm not an economist, and I'm not a market analyst, and I'm not a finance expert by any stretch of the imagination. But I think the only way the tariff strategy works is if you commit to it long-term. If this is a willy-nilly, we're going to have tariffs today, we're not going to have tariffs tomorrow, then it better just be a tool in the toolbox and a negotiating strategy, not something you're actually going to implement. Because if you're only going to implement them on a short-term basis, and you're going to threaten them and then back off and extend the deadline and all those things, then I think you're putting yourself into a really, really dangerous place. But if indeed, maybe this is wishful pie-in-the-sky thinking, you are looking at a strategy by which to eliminate the personal income tax and the Internal Revenue Service and replace it with revenue that the United States generates through the External Revenue Service, then that is a long-term play. It scares me a little bit to hear Howard Lutnick and Trump to a lesser degree throw out the possibility of eliminating the federal income tax. It's one thing to do that at the state level. It's a different thing at the federal level. It scares me a little bit to hear them just throwing that around. Because the one thing you absolutely don't want is to go down the road of eliminating the federal income tax and then not having the ability to follow through with that on an ongoing basis, and then you've got to reinstate it, and who's going to be in charge at the time you reinstate it, and could the system end up looking worse than the system you've got right now? There are a lot of variables in this. A lot of variables.
Well, and back to the tariff side, and not to hijack anything, but I mean, like you said, this is Trump. Well, we've had about a 48 hours trade wars. I mean, they haven't lasted long. He's put a 30-day little rescission for the auto industry and allowing them to get their ducks in order. And I can assure you he's going to be negotiating during those 30 days. So all the countries that have used tariffs have been using them long-term against us. They are a negotiating tool. If you want to have fair and balanced trade, well, we've seen it didn't work the other way we were trying this, giving away the store. Well, you might want to try something else.
Yeah.
It's kind of the way it works, you know.
Thomas in Greenwood says, I buy more food that comes from Mexico than cars. Where's my tariff relief? Thomas, sometimes I wonder if you even believe the stuff that you say, or you just throw stuff out there for the sake of being argumentative. Maybe you do. I mean, maybe you just sit around singing avocados from Mexico. You know, the commercial that you hear once a year during the Super Bowl. Maybe. Hey, this made me laugh. I've got to edit it for the purposes of radio because it's not clean enough to read it in its entirety, verbatim. But I think you're certainly going to get the gist. I saw this on Twitter and it made me laugh. My nephew is 5 years old, and all he does is watch other kids on YouTube playing video games. I asked him politely, why don't you play video games yourself? He says, you watch other people play football. Why don't you play yourself? So I turned off his Wi-Fi. Oh, I thought that was good. From the mouth of babes. From the mouth of babes. If you have a child that engages in video game play or watches YouTube, you probably have either wondered or asked that exact question yourself. Why are you watching somebody else play a game? Like, you have an Xbox. Play it yourself. Well, it's fun to do this.
Fun is definitely defined differently in these days.
Eye of the beholder. Eye of the beholder.
I guess. Yeah, Thomas is like, I buy all my ground nuts from Senegal, honestly. I'm direct, But that, as far as the Mexico comments, we get a lot of stuff from there. But
yeah. Hey, did you hear this? This was from Democrat Representative Sidney Kamliger-Dove.
You don't care about this country, and that is unacceptable if you claim to be the President of the United States. So we are here. We are not going anywhere. We are going to continue to fight back, and we are going to continue to speak lies to his truth.
Hey, we're going to continue to speak lies to his truth.
Oopsie daisy.
Wait, did she just tell the truth? I think she did. Hey, I'm out next week and look forward to being back with you the week after that. Mornings with Richard Cross. Have a great Thursday.
A SuperTalk Mississippi media production.